Welcome to the French American podcast, Patricia.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Celine, for having me.
I'm really excited to have a conversation with you. It's not the first time we talked twice, but today I wanted to share. I wanted to for my listeners that they can hear your story.
Yes, well, I'm excited to share my story. I always love to talk about myself.
Okay, so you've been living in France for 6.5 years. Does it feel like home to you?
Yes, yes. When I first arrived in France, it didn't necessarily feel like home, but I knew this was where I was supposed to be. It felt good to me. Didn't feel foreign. It felt like the place I was supposed to be.
Maybe it's hard to explain with words, but you felt it inside?
Yes, so when I got on the plane in Washington D.C. And flew into Charles de Gaulle, there were so many different emotions that I had, before. Was rushing to get rid of things in my home. This was a big move. I was coming on a sabbatical, so I wasn't working. It was a big risk to leave my job. So there were lots of emotions, that were whirling inside me as I flew across the Atlantic. But when I landed at the airport at Charles de Gaulle, I felt like, right. There was a sense of, oh yeah, I'm home. Now I say it didn't necessarily feel like home in the beginning because I didn't have the friendships, I didn't have the connections, I didn't necessarily know that I would be able to make it here long term, but it felt right. It just felt right.
And where did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
Well, so I grew up East Coast of the United States. So I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I moved to the suburbs in New Jersey and went to university in Massachusetts, still on the East Coast, but a little further north. And then I went to business school in Virginia. And I wound up living in Virginia for like 20, 25 years. So that was the last place that I called home. So
Hmm. How many different cities have you lived in?
not many, not many. So I was a baby when I lived in Philadelphia. Um, Lived in two cities, two towns in New Jersey, um, one town in Massachusetts, and two towns in Virginia. So was that seven? I wasn't counting. But
And,
all on the East Coast. So. Mhm.
okay. And in France, where do you live?
I currently live in a village called Serres, which is about 40 minutes outside of Perpignan. And my first year here in France, I lived in Perpignan. And my second year and beyond, I moved to Serres, and I absolutely love it.
Okay, so the south of France.
Yes.
Is it as I know Perpignan, but the other town I've never heard of it. Is it a small village?
Well, it's a village, and I call it small, but I think other French people would say, oh no. I think somebody actually said, oh no, you live in a small city. It's about 8,000 people. But
Okay.
to me, that's a village.
Obviously. And what do you appreciate in your life in France? What do you like? What is different, and what do you yeah why you don't want to live to the United States? Oh, sorry, it's not correct, but you know what I mean.
Why do I stay in France?
Yeah, why do you want to stay in France?
Like I said, it feels really good here to me. I, I'm writing my third book, which is really to explore why I had to get to France because France was not on my radar before 2015 when I first visited here, right? So it wasn't like, oh, since I was 12 years old, I love Paris. Like that's not my story. It was like, oh, maybe I could live in a French-speaking country. Maybe first I considered Canada, and the winters would be too cold. And so I decided, well, let me visit France. And 2015 was the first time I visited France and could see myself living here, but not in Paris and not in Aix-en-Provence. Those were the two places I visited. But in you writing this book, I've uncovered so many different reasons that I had to get here, that this I kind of follow this whim. But I, one of the biggest ones is it's so beautiful here. There are beautiful places in the U.S., but to me, the beauty here is spectacular, and so that is one of my core values. I think a big reason that I decided to move to a French-speaking country was because of the language. I wanted to speak French like French people do, and I'm still working on that. It's not as pretty as French speakers, but I'm getting there. And so that was my goal. That was my aim. So the language is the draw, the beauty is the draw. I feel good in my skin. You know, I
Yeah.
spent 50 years in the US, and so now it's time to spend the rest of my life in another country.
Great. And how long have you been studying French?
I started in 2014.
Okay.
So I that was the year that I decided I was going to solo travel to Quebec City, Canada. And I'd been there as a child, and I remember they spoke French there. And so I wanted to speak French with the locals. So I I ordered or enrolled in the Pimsleur Method program that helped me to get some words and phrases under my belt. And so that's when I started.
So 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Great. And you talked about the Pimsleur method. Maybe it was 3 weeks ago. So I gave it a try. On the website we have access to the first lesson. So I pretended like I was an American woman and I wanted to learn French, but we have access to only the first lesson. So I will love being able to see what happens um, after, because it was like the first lesson ever for beginners. But
Hmm.
um, I like it. So can you describe for my listeners who have never heard of it, um, how is it structured and how this method helped you, no, has been helping you to improve?
Yeah, so what I like about the Pimsleur method is that it gets you speaking. Because when I studied French in high school, when I studied French at university, uh, it's the grammar, it's the book stuff, it's the writing. And when you're in France, when you're traveling or you're living in France, much of what you need is the ability to speak. So it starts you off speaking. That first lesson, it's structured as a 30-minute lesson. The first minute of that lesson is a story. They tell a little story in French that you listen to, and so that helps with listening comprehension. But through the rest of that 29 minutes, you construct that story. You learn the words and phrases and expressions that comprise that story. And so at the end of that, you are starting to learn that story. It's reinforced in the second lesson, maybe in the third lesson, and then it starts to add new things. It will call back in lesson 4 or 5, whatever, something you learned in lesson one to reinforce it.
So they use space repetition.
Yep, time, space, repetition. Yep. Hmm.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like magic because I'll get to lesson 10 and they'll ask me to say something I learned way back in lesson one, and it's there. I have the word or I have the phrase, and it's there. And it's like, oh, where did that come from? Because that was not something I had, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah. But they use repetition a lot. I did it for French and I tried for Norwegian too, because when I did it in French, it was not, I'm a French native speaker, so it wasn't the same. So I
Hmm.
wanted to try this method with Norwegian. And
Hmm.
I studied Norwegian for a few months just to be a beginner again, you know?
Hmm.
And yeah, I get the impression that we repeat a lot. So we try to memorize things, to
Hmm.
understand, to memorize, to repeat. And yeah, it's good because right at the beginning, we have the opportunity to speak.
Mhm.
Even we don't talk to someone else, we talk to ourselves, but at least we train our muscles.
Yes. And I think the thing that is beautiful about Pimsleur is it gets you talking. But it also, when I went to Canada after listening to 2 or maybe 3 weeks of lessons,
Mm.
I went and I said, Bonjour, comment allez-vous? And the Quebecois, they responded like I was a native French speaker. Bonjour, comment allez-vous? And then this rapid fire French that I didn't understand. And I
Yeah.
had this deer in the headlights look like, what did you say? And then they said, oh, you speak English. Your accent was so good it fooled me, right?
Yeah.
So I think you can get a good level or good accent from using that as well.
Yeah, it's so important to nail it at the beginning because
Mhm.
if we mispronounce words for a few months, it's really hard to pronounce them properly after.
Yeah, to undo what you've learned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
undo, yeah, for it's really hard. So, but the tricky part is people can think that you have an intermediate level, although you are just a beginner.
Yeah, absolutely. That was but the good thing about that was I was encouraged. So I was like, oh, okay. I'm going to
It's
continue.
good. It feels
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for beginners it's worth a try because it's really I think yeah, there is a lot of positive things.
Yeah, I think the one drawback, and it's not really a drawback of Pimsleur, it's just something that as you're learning a new language, you need to learn different ways. Like, so that's auditory. You want to have a way to kind of see the words, and they do have a portion that is the written lessons, but I never use them. But so you can see the words and how they're written, because that for me helps to reinforce and helps me to remember, right? Remember what the word is.
And I'm wondering how long did you wait before reading a proper book, a real book, and listening to it to this book at the same time, reading and listening at the same time with other content.
Yeah, so in 2014, summer of 2014, I started Pimsleur, and I moved to France in 2018. So I did a little bit of reading. I had a tutor in the United States, but when I kind of, you know, had a the writing portion and the grammar portion, that was when I came to France because I took a proper French class. And so that helped me to, because I realized when I got here, oh, I'm illiterate. I can speak, a good basic level of French, but reading and writing, that was something that I couldn't do well. And so the proper French class helped me with that.
But I think it's not really common to do it this way. Usually, people do it the other way around.
Mhm,
They start with reading and writing and grammar, and
mhm.
after, oh, they try to speak. You did it the other way around,
Yeah.
and I think it's more motivating. You know?
Yes. Yes, I think because for me, even sometimes now when I have a conversation with somebody and somebody understands me and I understand them, there's a little high that comes in there because like, oh, right? And so it motivates because you see the progress. You recognize that you're communicating.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
Mhm. Great, great. And did you struggle because you we in 2018 you were a beginner, so tell us about some situations where you struggled and it was really frustrating because you can't have no you couldn't have what you oh sorry I'm struggling with verb tenses yeah some situations where you struggled.
Well, I think the biggest thing for me was I had, like I said, a good basic French level. So, and I came over and I felt pretty good with what I had under my belt. But the problem came when I was, in situations at the prefecture or at the pharmacy, and I felt so far out of my element. I was nervous because here I had just moved to France, and French was not my first language, and I needed to communicate. And so my mind was just a whir with, oh my gosh, I'm doing this thing. Oh my gosh, I'm nervous to say the right words. And a lot of times in that state, I knew the words, I knew how to communicate what I wanted to say. It just, I couldn't produce it because my mind was just so, caught up in the differentness of living in a foreign country.
Were you scared of their judgment or?
I think for me, it was not necessarily judgment about my language skills. It was more about I was a shy, introverted person who, before a few years before, had not considered living in a foreign country, wasn't a world traveler. And here I was doing this thing that was something that I never in a million years had imagined. And so it was not necessarily about the language, it was about all I had done. Like that I was like in uncharted waters. And so it wasn't about them judging me. It was like, oh my gosh, this is how do I get a cell phone, in a country that isn't my own country? Oh, you've got to jump through these hoops. And am I going to be able to, communicate well enough, but also figure things out?
Yeah, you are talking about cultural differences.
Mhm. Cultural differences, administrative differences,
Yeah,
because people will ask me, people who want to move to the US, they'll ask me, well, how do I do this, administrative task to move to the US? Like, I don't know because I never had to do it,
yeah,
right? So coming here, applying for the carte vitale or just things just aren't necessarily done in the same manner. And so you go in, there are the cultural differences, there's the language barrier, there's, oh my gosh, I quit my job and I moved to France and I'm doing this thing and it's scary, right? All of those things, came at me and caused me not to be able to think clearly so that I couldn't speak, I couldn't use the skills that I had learned well because I couldn't access them.
yeah, yeah. I understand. I got it. It's not only the language barriers. It's all a lot of things work differently. There is no carte vitale in the US,
Right. Hmm.
and yeah, so a lot of things are different. So you have to understand how you have to figure it out how it works, and you have to express yourself fluently to yeah to yeah I get it.
And like I think if somebody has is extroverted, if they love to talk with people, that might make it easier. But I have introvert tendencies, so I could cloister away in my apartment and be good. So actually putting myself out there, so that there's that element too. So that all made my head foggy, and I was saying belt when I wanted to say something else, and it was like, Patricia, you know that. That was frustrating, knowing that I knew the words and I wasn't able to communicate the way that I knew that I could.
Hmm. And how did you meet a new friends?
How did I meet new friends?
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that I knew that I'd have to put myself out there. And so I knew that I was going to need to meet people in an interesting way, a way that I didn't typically do in the US. And so somebody told me about this site called On Va Sortir, OVS. And I signed up and I looked at what the activities were that were going on that people had put together. And so I went to, art openings, with a group of people, so I didn't have to do it by myself. I took a laughter yoga class, and this was something laughter yoga. I didn't know what it was. I just read a blurb about it in French, and I thought, sounds interesting. I like to laugh. I'm going to go. And so it was not in the center of town. I had to get on a bus and then walk a little ways. And I got there and I loved it, right? It was something that helped with so that I was, I felt inhibited because it's like, oh, you laugh and you look at people and you're around people you don't know and you're acting like children. But it was a great meditation, and I think that's the sort of thing that probably if I had done before I went out to the pharmacy, if I laughed for 5 or 10 minutes, that would have kind of shaken any of that inhibition away. And then I probably would have been able to communicate more clearly. Because they say that laughing does so much for you, it's so good for you.
Yeah. And were you immersed in with French people, or I'm wondering if there were English native speakers around you?
I tried not to have English native speakers around me because my goal in coming to France was to get fluent in French.
Yeah.
And I knew that, people, English speakers or whatever their native tongue is, they can come to a country and live in a country for 20 years and not be able to speak the language. And I didn't want to do that. I knew what my aim was. And so I avoided, being around English speakers. Now, I guess maybe 3 years ago, I was like, okay, I opened up and said, yeah, this is okay. I can have English speaking friends. But in the beginning, I sought out French speaking
Mm.
friends.
Yeah, I think it was really, really smart. And you knew that you had to get out of your comfort zone. But I imagine it was really challenging, but you you created a French environment around you with no English native speaker. So you didn't have choice. You had to speak French.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I think it's, 3 years ago, and when I opened things up, that kind of probably helped to reduce the number of opportunities that I had to advance more quickly. So now I am, I'm studying for the DELF exam. And so now I am working to create more of a French environment so that I'm, because I work in English, right? I speak English when I work. So there's that a big chunk of my day that's not in French. And so just creating an environment and meeting more French people and watching more French TV shows and YouTube videos just to have it wash over me so that I can speak more fluidly, right? I think I speak well. I don't necessarily speak like somebody who is native, right? And I just want it to roll off my tongue like I can speak English. And so that's the next step.
And 3 years ago, you decided to have English native speakers friends. Was it important for you to feel connected with people who lived in
No.
US?
No.
Why did you do it?
um, it's and a lot of the English speaking friends I have are British. So
Right.
there's not a deep connection. I do have a couple of American friends here. Um, I think that sometimes just because I'm from the US and somebody else is from the US, we don't have anything in common, right? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. So it was, yeah, that was not something that I craved.
Mm. Okay. So now you try to find a balance to be more to talk with French native speakers more, to be more immersed in the French environment, to make progress quicker, faster.
Yeah, so I have some French friends who speak pretty good English, right? And so 3 years ago, whatever, kind of got slack on my insisting that in our conversations we speak French. And I have one fairly new French friend who is trying to learn English, and so we'll go on hikes, and she'll want to practice her English, and I want to be mindful of that, and so we'll do that. But having that balance so that I get the opportunity to speak French with her is, it can be a challenge. I think in those situations, it's let's come up with an agreement that we can, do it for 30 minutes and then 30 minutes and then if you want to speak English to me and I respond in French, okay. right? Because I think now also my level of oral comprehension is very much better than it was in the beginning. For me in the beginning, that was the last thing to come. That was the hardest thing for me.
To understand when fast people when they speak really fast.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
Because I'd hear and understand a word here and there, but then I couldn't put it all together, and then they were on to something else, and so that was hard. Now, I can watch. Well, movies are still a little bit hard because they mumble, and those are still hard. But like watching something on YouTube, or it's like, okay, yeah, I get it, and I can do something else now too. I can multitask and understand, so
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
And
feeling
you're
pretty
right.
good.
Movies, I think it's really difficult because sometimes there is noise. We can't hear clearly their voices, and yeah, yeah. It's not the
Mhm.
same with a YouTube video.
Yeah.
You're
Even when they're speaking at normal pace.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
mhm.
And yeah, you with your friends, it was like no, it was kind of a language partners. 30 minutes in English, 30 minutes in French. You switch.
Yeah, so when we're hiking, it's not really like that, although I use it like that. I mean, she's not necessarily as focused on improving her English as I am on improving my French because I have a goal. Like
Yeah,
come December, I've got this test. And so I'll ask her questions and I'm like, explain that to me. Like, so it is an exchange on my part, but it's not necessarily uh, an official exchange. I do have a language exchange partner and have had her for a couple of years now, where we do the 30 minutes. It's on Zoom, 30 minutes in French, 30 minutes in English, and in fact, now we're good friends. I um, went up to. She lives in the north, and I went up to Rouen,
right.
and I met up with her because they had the Armada up there a couple of years ago, or last year maybe it was, and so we met in person. So that was really neat.
Hmm. I can relate. I have two language partners, and we are friends now.
Mhm.
Okay. And you talked about the DALF. So you plan to take the DALF in September because
In this December.
December, September,
Like,
September is
no,
tomorrow.
I'm not prepared, and I don't know that. Yeah, I will be prepared in December, but that's my goal.
Okay, so you have 2 months, three, September,
Yeah,
October, November, four. It depends.
three
Three,
and a half.
three and a half. Okay, because you plan to go for French nationality?
Um, yes, so I've already taken the TCF exam and given by the state for the visa that I have, and I passed that at a B1 level because it only went up to B1. And now, recently in January, they changed the level that's required to get French nationality, and to a B2. And I could take the TCF or I could take the DELF and pass it at a B2 level. But my aim is not to have to take another French test to prove my level. So if I go for the DELF, which is a diplome, that will last forever, not just 2 years. And if I pass it at, or when I pass it at a C1 level, then I know they're not going to raise it to a C2 level
Yeah, yeah.
for citizenship.
Mm. So you don't want to take exams every 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I, you know, even if I'm even if I'm confident that I can pass the exam, is an exam and it's stressful.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Okay. And when you moved in France, you said that you were unemployed, but I know that right now you're a life coach. So guide us through your journey from yeah. How did you become a life coach?
So in back in the US, I became a certified life coach in 2016. I took training in 2015 and 2016. So I developed the skills through this training and I coached a handful of people in the United States, and I always had to refer them to therapists because coaching and therapy is really closely related, but I'm not a therapist, and so if something is too deeply ingrained, it's not my lane, and I have to refer to a therapist. And so, like the three people that I was coaching, I had to refer to therapists, and I was like, well, maybe I'm in the wrong area because I don't want to be a therapist. I don't want to drill down into what happened, when you were 5. I want to look, work with people and look forward. So I did not pursue that. I put, that training on the shelf, and I was tired of, in the United States, I was a project manager and I was ready to change my life. And so I quit that project management job. So when I moved to France, I was on a visitor visa and I was not permitted to work. So I lived off of my savings. And I did that for the first year, and that felt good. Toward the end of the first year, I was feeling like, I want to help people who want to make this big move, who might be a little bit introverted, who might not have the confidence to do it on their own. I want to help them to develop that that ability, that confidence, so that they can do it and experience life like I'm experiencing it. And so I considered going for the visa that I'm on now, which is a profession liberal visa. And I even started writing my business plan, but I didn't have the belief that I could pull it off. And so I just applied for the visitor visa for year 2 and for year 3. But my funds were starting to get low, and I was starting to believe that, oh, you have enough experience here in France to help other people along. Because part of the reason I didn't believe it in year 1 was, well, I'm only less than a year in. Yeah, who's going to hire you to help them to make this move when you just did this and you're not sure you can make this last? So in 2021 was when I decided to go for the profession liberal visa, and that's what I did. So now I have a coaching practice that helps primarily women, but I do have a handful of male clients to find the confidence and courage to do the scary thing and move to a foreign country.
Hmm. Yeah, great. And so since 2020, 2021, you've been feeling more confident that you were able to do it, so you can help people to move abroad.
Yes, and still in 2021, when I founded my business, there was still like, can I do this? I've got the year to kind of prove myself. But people signed up for my program, and now I do some things in person. So it's when you step out on faith and you start to see that people are interested and you have successes, that helps to build you up and build your belief up in yourself. And um, yeah, so it feels great.
Yeah, and I imagine, and you help a lot of Americans, right?
Yeah, mostly Americans. I do have a Canadian member of my program, so yeah.
Mm. And how do you help them to? Uh, when do you start working with them? Before they move, or just after a few years before?
Yes, so I believe that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So what I mean by that is I work with people before they make the move, right? Because a lot of people, I think that moving abroad is just about the logistics. Okay, I've got to find a place to live. I've got to get the visa. Um, maybe I need to learn some of the language. And then I get on a plane and I move to this different country. And then everything is going to be fine. I'm going to settle in nicely, and that's that. But there is a bit, so, and the logistics are really important, but there is a big part that if you want to thrive when you move abroad, you need to be mentally prepared. And so my program is set up so that people who are between 6 and 18 months out before their move can join the program. And in that way, they can get clear on, why they're going to turn their lives upside down. They're going to look at the characteristics or traits that they have that they feel like they need to improve so that they can then see themselves, have the self identity of the kind of person who moves abroad and moves abroad confidently and sustainably. And then that third part of my program is all about the logistics. It's the planning, making sure you're closing out the things you need to close out in your old country, that you're setting things up in advance for your new country, those sorts of things, the project sort of stuff. And then the program also has weekly group coaching and mentoring calls to ask questions, to be coached through things that they are blocked about, so that they can continue to make progress and build momentum.
So you help them to figure it out, how to do it, and you're also their accountability partner in a sense.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. One part of the coaching calls is accountability. So sometimes people will say, Patricia, I am working to improve my level of French. I want you to make sure that I, do, my 5 lessons this week.
Mm.
And then we talk about that. It's not just about, okay, I'll take that on and ask you. No, I want them to be successful. So then I ask them, well, what could stop you from doing your 5 lessons? And they tell me, well, myself, I will turn on the TV or whatever. And we talk about that and we tie that back to, their why, so that they feel more motivated to not do the thing that feels easy. And then we create a plan. Okay, well, what time of day are you going to do these 5 lessons? Right? Put it on your calendar. How are you going to know that it's time for you to start this? Oh, set an alarm on your calendar, or tie it to something that you do habitually, so that oh, I just finished my coffee. Now it's time for me to do my 30-minute lesson. Or for
Yeah,
me, or for me with Pimsleur, it was on my morning walk. I'm walking and I'm speaking French.
yeah, perfect. Yeah, you're doing some you when you did that, you improved your French and you were taking care of your health. So
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. And I was already walking. I was like, oh, okay.
I listen. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts when I walk because yeah, I love walking. I need to do it for for my health. So if I'm listening to a podcast that I love, it's enjoyable. It's not
Hmm.
a chore.
Yeah.
And you said something just before I wanted to say. Oh, I forgot. What did you say? What did you say just before that? Yeah, I remember. You help them to create new habits, um,
Yes.
because it's not enough to know what we should do. We have to do it.
Mhm. We have to do it. And, one of the things for me that, is talking about in the beginning, about I made this big move that I didn't necessarily think was possible for me, and I had done it. And so in the early months, my first 2 weeks here was just incredible. Like, I was on cloud nine. I was like, oh, I did it. Yes, I'm so great. And then week 3 came, and in the middle of the night, I woke up and I thought, oh, Patricia, what have you done? You've quit your job. You don't have a job. You're living off your savings. You don't know anybody. What were you thinking? Was this such a smart move? And so that fear and self doubt started to creep in. So even though I had done this thing, I hadn't created a habit of believing that I could sustain myself here. And so, as you say, yeah, it's we we sometimes don't do things because we don't see ourselves as that person, and we don't see ourselves as that person because we haven't had those experiences over and over and over again that create the habit of being that kind of person.
So you help them um, to develop a growth mindset.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Because a lot of times people, and I work with people who are middle aged, maybe some people who are in retirement, and I think as when we're children, we tend to be just more open to experiencing whatever happens during the day. That uncertainty is not something that children are worried about. But as we, age and people start to make us feel afraid of doing things that are different or go off the beaten path, then we can start to have that fear, right? And so that can close down, we can stop us from having that growth mindset. And so, yes, I give them my confidence, right? They come to the calls and I am so sure that they can do it, that they sense that. But then also they're creating those habits. They're looking at something, another tool that I use is called a confidence anchor. So maybe you haven't ever moved abroad, but tell me something else big that you did that you didn't think you could do. Okay, well, how were you able to do that? How did it feel when you did that? What were some of the things you put in place when you did that? And call back to that every time you have that, oh my gosh, can I do this? Oh no, you can do this because, well, you didn't think you could do this other thing either. So, like I said, I call that a confidence anchor.
Yeah, I love it. And I realize that our programs have a lot of things in common.
Ah,
Yeah. And you talked about so the best time the best time period for your clients to work with you is 6 months to 18 months before they move abroad.
right. So if somebody's considering a move abroad, if they're considering 5 years down the line, it's too early,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If they're considering 3 months before, it's a little too late because 3 months, your head's down, you're getting rid of stuff, you're doing last minute things, and you don't have time to take advantage of the lessons. So 6 months gives it enough time. 18 months, maybe even 2 years would be good because the program, and this is for single women who are looking to move abroad. It's called the Carefree Expat Incubator Program. That program that I offer is valid for 3 years. So if you get into the program, even 2 years before you make the move, then you'll have a year on the back end when you are getting situated and settled that you can have a moment like I had and thinking, oh, what have I done? And you can get on a coaching call and we can talk through what you're experiencing and create a plan to help you feel less overwhelmed and feel good about what you have just done. So, yeah, so that's why it is like that because you need enough time, but too much time it's just not you're not I think the things that we're working on, um, you're not going to be motivated to do it.
Hmm. And when I'm not sure if homesickness is the word I'm looking for, because you were talking more about um, like you were scared. Oh, what did I do? Oh, so how did you overcome homesickness or the fear to live in France?
Yeah, so yeah, homesickness is not the right word because
Yeah,
like I said, when
yeah,
I landed, when the wheels touched down from that plane, I was like, oh, this feels really good. So I didn't experience homesickness. And I have experienced homesickness, but when I was at university, but that was not a part of this. But how did I move through that feeling of, oh, that self-doubt,
self
that
doubt.
questioning? Yeah. Um, it was a tug of war. I wrote about it in my second book. Um, it was a tug of war because it would it would come, and I would recognize that it was fear, right? And I would recognize that is not necessarily true. The things that I'm thinking about, oh, you're gonna run out of money, all those things that help me to question this decision weren't necessarily real. What I what I did, because I have taken on this ideal of life not being a struggle. And so, struggle is defined by effort laced with negative emotions. All
Mm.
right. So, yes, the things that I'm doing take effort. Writing a book or learning French, that all takes effort. But when there is negativity or negative emotions or anxiety that is around that, then I'm struggling. And that doesn't feel good to me. And I don't want that. So, this the feeling that I had 3 weeks in, and for the first several months, and this tug of war of, oh, maybe you shouldn't have done this, when that would come up, I would feel like, oh, this doesn't feel good to me. This feels like struggle. And I would say, no, Patricia, you are here, because intuition brought me here, right? I listened to my intuition. You listen to your intuition. You've listened to intuition before. You haven't trusted it, but you know you can trust it. This feels right. And I would just have to keep swatting away those emotions and those thoughts. And, over time, toward the end of my first year, that started to kind of evaporate. And I started to feel like, yeah, Patricia, this is where you're supposed to be. Yeah, you still don't have a job, but you made it almost a year. So you're going to be good. You're going to be okay.
Hmm, great. And I'm wondering, what do you miss most about the US? There is something or nothing?
What do I miss most? We talk about cultural differences. Convenience, convenience and comforts. I miss having screens on my windows to keep the bugs out. I miss having um, a clothes dryer so that if I want to wash my jeans and wear them the next day, I don't have to plan 2 days in advance. Um, I miss stores being open longer, right? Convenience and comforts.
Mhm. Oh, really interesting. Okay. And when you work with your clients, how do you feel when, thanks to you, they are ready to change their life, their life?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
How do you feel? How do you feel that when you realize that you help them to overcome their everything and they are able to move abroad and to change their lives?
Yeah, so today is August 26th, and one of the women in my program yesterday got on a plane, and today she landed in France. And every time somebody makes that move, there are a lot of little wins beforehand, but when somebody does that, I feel like I have done it all over again, right? I'm so excited for them. I'm like, oh, I wonder how they're feeling. I wonder if she's feeling like I did, and it just feels like I'm doing it over again. So when somebody has made that move, feels great. But even before then, when I'm helping people and they have an aha moment of, oh, now I see why I've been procrastinating, and they move past that. It feels amazing. It feels incredible.
Okay. And it's funny because yesterday or 2 days ago, I talked to an American woman, and she told me I'm moving to France tomorrow. Maybe no, I think no, it's not. It can't be the same woman. Her
And
name,
she's moving to study French.
yeah, her name is Nanny.
No, no, it's
Ah,
not.
no, it's not.
Yeah.
It would be a huge coincidence.
Oh yeah.
It would have been a huge coincidence.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, you feel proud to see that you helped them to do it.
I feel proud, but I think the emotion is more. Is it more excitement for them?
Excitement for them.
Because I remember how I didn't necessarily believe in myself, and but I did it, and how they signed up for me because they had some doubts about their ability to do it, and yet they're doing it. And so it's that excitement, the excitement that I had in doing it, those first couple of weeks, right?
Yeah. Great. And I have two questions before the end. How many different chapters have you gone through in your life so far?
Oh my gosh.
It's not
I
an easy
don't
one.
know.
It's not an easy question.
It's not an easy question. In this third book that I'm working on is a memoir, so it's like, how would I break that down? Um, well, well, certainly, if I answer this question, I can start. I'm going to think through it as I answer it. There's the before the death of my parents and the after the death of my parents chapter, right? So that is that is that is why I'm here in France, right? Recognizing that life is short, and so the things that I'm doing now are things that I probably wouldn't have done, before they died, just because I thought, I've got enough time. I'm not thinking about regrets or anything like that. So there's definitely like the first half and the second half, and that is defined by, the death of my parents. So that's one chapter. Um, I think there's another chapter of, I don't know, another chapter of getting through university and business school, right? Because that was kind of young there. There's another chapter of trying to find my way in business and getting fired and laid off and all of that. And then I think there is another chapter where it was finding, finding my rhythm at work as a project manager, and even if I was bouncing from one company to another, it was still with the project management, still knowing that I'd be able to support myself, buying the house, all of that. And then this chapter, the French chapter. So is that five? Did you count? Were you
No,
counting? That's
I
your
was,
job.
no, I was listening to the different chapters, but how many chapters?
so,
Um,
so college, university, right? Um, Looking for a job, finding my way with a job, getting settled in that job, getting settled in a job. That's three. Um, was there another one in there? I would say before my parents died, right, and then after, which is this chapter now.
Great.
Mhm.
And you seem to like, I get the impression that you like writing books. So I assume that you like reading books too. Can
Mhm.
you can you share the title of a book you love and you could read again and again?
And a book in English or a book in French?
You choose.
Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that there's a book that I would could read over and over again.
Over and over again.
I don't know. I read a book called, and I'm not going to even remember the title of it. That was, so you're asking me the title of this book, and I can't remember it. So it's not going to be much help to readers. Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I can answer that.
Okay. You like reading, but you don't have one particular book you can read over and over again?
Yeah, and I read, I write. I'm not, I don't. I'm not a write. I'm a writer, but I'm not. That's not my primary,
Mm.
calling, right? So you say you like writing. Well, I'm in the throes of writing this book. I wouldn't say I'm liking it. But when I get ideas, I write. And I mean, I think the books that I find the most interesting most profound are memoirs, right? So there is this element of um, Just As I Am is a book by, I'm gonna have to look this up, by the actress Cicely Tyson, Just As I Am. And she wrote it, she published it probably a month before she passed. And that just is, it just shows the strength and fortitude that she had as a Black woman in the movie industry, entertainment industry, that she had all the things she had to deal with and overcome. And so like books like that, but I don't know that I could read the book over and over
Yeah,
again because I've gotten I know her story.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're right. I should change my question and just ask my guests to recommend a book they like.
Oh, well. I mean, and there's so many for me, like, because I'm a self-help person, so I like self-help books. I like the memoirs. Um, I think for on the level of self-help, a book I like is called The Alter Ego Effect, I think it's called. And that's about, we were talking about habits, and how we need to become the kind of person who does the thing that we want to do, even though we might not have done that. And so this book, The Alter Ego Effect, is about taking on a character, right, who has like this superpower that will help you to do the thing you want to do and help you believe you have the power to do it. So for example, if you are um, Superman, as like he has an alter ego, right? So when he gets in that phone booth, he puts on that cape, and all of a sudden he has transformed to do these other things. So it's about finding, what quality or what superhero characteristic do you need to embody so that you can do the thing you need to do, and what sort of prop can you use so that, maybe it's a pair of shoes, or maybe it's glasses, or you know maybe it's something else that when you put them on you can say, okay, I've got this, I can do this thing. So that was a powerful book as well.
Hmm. And maybe you can share a last one in French, a book you write in French
um
to inspire our listeners.
yes, and I'm gonna botch the title because it's really long and it's in French. Ta deuxième vie commence quand when you realize you don't have a second one.
Yeah, I know this author.
Yes.
I will put the title and the name of the author on the notes. I can't remember it right now, but yeah, I
Yes.
loved it too.
Yeah, that I mean, because that's another kind of self-help inspirational book, but there's a story. Here we go. Oh, no, no, no. Ta deuxième vie commence quand tu comprends que tu n'en as qu'une.
Oui, oui. Et l'auteur? Dis-moi l'auteur.
C'est Raphael, it's so small.
Raphaël
Giordano.
Giordano, ouais, quelque chose comme ça. Okay.
Yeah, it's tiny. Like my arm is as far as it can go, and I still can't read it. So
And she wrote a few books, and another one is called Le jour où les lions mangeront de la salade verte.
le jour quoi?
Où les lions, the
Mhm,
lions,
mhm.
mangeront de la salade verte.
Ah,
The title is weird, but her books are really great.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice talking to you today, and I'm really glad that my listeners will listen to your story. So thank you a lot, Patricia.
I want to thank you so much for asking me to be on this. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.